Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're diving into cybersecurity, all those breaches and vulnerabilities, the stuff that makes headlines.
Yeah.
You sent over a ton of reports and articles, so you're not just looking for the surface stuff. You want to know what's really going on.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is that these aren't just random events. They actually show how the threat landscape is changing and how it affects everyone.
Right. Everyone.
From everyday people to huge corporations and even essential services.
Okay, so let's break this down. One thing that stood out to me, well, two things, really. First, healthcare. Always a prime target, right?
Unfortunately, yeah.
This case with Access Health System in Colorado, hit by ransomware. $1 million ransom demand. It makes you think twice about those online patient portals.
Absolutely. It really highlights how disruptive these attacks can be. I mean, imagine needing urgent care, but the hospital systems are down because of ransomware.
Right. It's not even about the money at that point. It's about lives.
Exactly.
And it's not just healthcare. American Water, the utility company.
Right, I saw that.
Their systems went down, and everyone's worried about their water.
Yeah.
Luckily, the water itself wasn't affected.
Yeah, that was fortunate.
But still, it shows how vulnerable even essential services are.
For sure. The American Water case really shows how these things can snowball. What if they hadn't contained it? It could have affected water treatment, distribution, billing.
Oh, wow.
Think about the chaos.
Total ripple effect.
Exactly.
Okay, so hospitals, water companies, what's next?
Well, the criminals are getting more creative. Look at this Casio ransomware attack.
What did they do?
They're not just stealing data. They're using it to set up even more scams, like phishing attacks.
So they hit you with ransomware, steal your data, and then target you again with phishing.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
It's a double whammy. And it shows how these attacks are becoming way more complex. It's not just those old school methods anymore.
You mean like AI? I read something about ChatGPT being used for malware.
Exactly. There's a report from OpenAI that suggests that ChatGPT, that chatbot everyone's talking about, could be used to write malicious code. It's like giving criminals a superpowered AI assistant.
That's scary how smart that is. And this isn't just like lone hackers anymore, is it? It's organized groups, maybe even governments.
You're right. The U.S. Border Agency is under scrutiny right now for how its app handles data.
Yeah.
And that's a sensitive topic, right? Huge implications if that information gets out.
For sure.
Raises all sorts of questions about transparency, accountability, and it's not just a U.S. thing, it's global.
Didn't National Public Data go bankrupt after a cyber attack?
They did.
Yeah.
Completely snowballed into a massive crisis. And it just shows how devastating a data breach can be financially, legally.
Wow.
Cybersecurity isn't just an IT problem anymore. It affects businesses, legal systems, society.
It's everything. Okay, so we've got hackers up in their game, governments and big companies struggling to keep up, and now AI is in the mix too. It's a lot.
It is, but, it's not always about those big, crazy attacks. Sometimes it's the simple things that make us vulnerable.
Like what? Not writing your password on a sticky note and sticking it to your monitor.
Well, yeah, that too.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about those software updates everyone ignores, those little pop-ups. Update now. They're actually really important. These reports, the ones from Microsoft and Veeam, they highlight how crucial those updates really are.
Okay, so what makes them so important? What's so dangerous about these vulnerabilities, especially that one in Windows?
So this Microsoft vulnerability, it's called CVE 2024-43468. And it got a 9.8 out of 10 on the severity scale.
That's like really bad, right?
It is. Basically, it lets an attacker remotely take control of your computer.
Wait, what does that even mean? Like, they can control my computer from anywhere.
Pretty much. They could read your files, get into your camera, even steal your banking info, all without even touching your computer.
Okay, that's actually terrifying.
Yeah, it's a big deal. And that's why those updates are so crucial. They patch up those holes, the ones the hackers could use.
So it's like locking your doors and windows, but for your computer.
Exactly. And it's not just Microsoft either. That Veeam vulnerability is a whole other story. Hackers are using a flaw in their backup software to basically create rogue accounts. Then they use that to deploy ransomware and lock up all your important data.
Wait, so they're breaking into the systems that are supposed to protect your data and then using that to hold your data hostage?
Basically. They're turning the tables. It's honestly pretty clever. And it just goes to show you need layers of security, strong passwords, using multi-factor authentication, regular backups, all of it works together.
It's like a digital arms race, right? The good guys and the bad guys constantly trying to outsmart each other.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Just when you think you're ahead, they find a new way to exploit something. And these weaknesses can pop up anywhere.
Like those unencrypted cookies on F5 systems, the BGIP ones. I read about that, but who knew something as small as a cookie could be a big deal?
It just goes to show that even the smallest things can have huge security risks. In this case, those unencrypted cookies could let hackers map out a company's entire network, like leaving a trail of breadcrumbs straight to their most valuable stuff.
Yikes, is it like giving them a blueprint to rob you blind?
Exactly. Luckily, F5 released instructions on how to encrypt those cookies, and they've got this tool, BigHIP iHealth, that helps spot any problems that can make a network vulnerable.
So tools like that are essential these days, especially with open source software becoming so popular. Didn't that Sonatype report say there's been a huge increase in attacks targeting open source projects?
Absolutely. Open source is great, don't get me wrong, but it does come with its own security challenges.
Yeah.
Because anyone can contribute to the code, there's always that risk that something malicious could slip through.
So how do we prevent that? Should we just go back to using only proprietary software?
Not necessarily. It's about having really strong security practices, like throughout the entire process of developing software. Developers and companies need to be super careful about the open source stuff they're using. They need to have ways to spot and fix vulnerabilities quickly.
And fixing them fast is key, right?
Absolutely. But that's often where things fall apart. We see it time and time again. Like with Log4j, there's been a fix available for a while, but tons of downloads are still using that vulnerable version.
So even when we know there's a problem, actually fixing it is a whole other challenge.
Exactly. There's this disconnect between knowing about the problem and actually doing something about it.
Yeah.
Companies need to close that gap if they want to stay ahead of these threats. And it's not just companies, it's all of us. We all have a part to play.
Speaking of playing a part, what about internal risks? I mean, we've talked a lot about external threats, but what about vulnerabilities from inside a company?
That's a great point. And it's something we often overlook. Take that HashiCorp vulnerability, for example. It could let attackers get more access and control within their system. So even with security measures in place, those internal weaknesses can be exploited.
So it's like you can build a fortress, but if someone leaves a side door open?
Exactly. It's all about having those layers of security and understanding that no system is perfect, there's always some risk, and the key is managing it effectively.
And sometimes that risk is literally just human error, right?
Sometimes, yeah. That Proofpoint report on healthcare cyber attacks, that one really highlighted this.
And one that found that almost all healthcare organizations were hit with cyber attacks last year?
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
And a huge chunk of those attacks, like 69%, they messed with patient care, delayed procedures, made it hard to get medical records. It has real consequences.
Wow.
And it's not always hackers breaking in, right? It's employees falling for phishing scams, clicking bad links, accidentally downloading malware.
Yeah, all those things we've all done at some point.
Exactly. Human error is a big factor in all this. That's why it's so important to train people about security, educating them on the threats, how to spot them, what to do if something seems off.
So it's not just about having the best security software, it's about creating a culture of security.
Exactly. It starts with awareness, but companies need to invest in those security resources and training.
And finding qualified people to do the work, wasn't there a stat about a shortage of cybersecurity professionals?
Oh, there's a massive shortage.
Yeah.
The demand is way higher than the supply, so it's tough for companies to find and keep qualified people.
So even if you have the money for the best tools, you might not have anyone who knows how to use them.
That's the reality for a lot of companies. And it shows how important it is to invest in education and training to bring up the next generation of cybersecurity professionals.
So we've talked about the bad guys, the vulnerabilities, even human error. It's a lot. But let's talk about solutions. We touched on AI earlier. How can it help those SOC teams, the ones on the front lines of all this?
Well, remember that Vectra survey we talked about? The one that showed how tough their job is. Dealing with all those alerts, most of them nothing serious. AI can be a huge help there. It's like giving them a filter to cut through the noise and find the real threats.
So instead of replacing human analysts, it's more like giving them a superpower.
Exactly. AI can handle the repetitive stuff, freeing up humans to focus on strategy, making decisions, things you need human intuition and experience for.
That's good to hear. So there's hope. But it's not just a magic bullet, right? You can't just turn it on and forget about it.
Right. Cybersecurity is always changing, so you got to keep adapting. But the early signs are promising. Some studies show that organizations using AI tools are getting better at detecting threats. And importantly, their teams are less burned out.
That's really important. We need those security pros to be at their best. But But even with all that, cybercrime isn't going away anytime soon, is it? Especially with ransomware exploding like it is. Those numbers from the coalition report were scary.
They were. Ransomware has become a huge business. And like any business, these criminals want more profit. So now they're going after bigger organizations demanding bigger ransoms. The average loss from a ransomware attack is unbelievable.
So what can someone like me do? Just a regular person trying to stay safe online?
It's about being smart and proactive, not living in fear. Use strong passwords, turn on that two-factor authentication, keep your software updated. They sound basic, but they make a big difference.
It's like wearing your seatbelt, right? It might not prevent a crash, but it could save your life.
Exactly. And you wouldn't leave your front door wide open, right? Same goes for your digital life.
And watch out for those phishing emails. Never click links from people you don't know.
Right. Be cautious, know what the threats are, and take steps to protect yourself.
So if there's one thing you want our listeners to remember from all of this, what would it be?
Cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility. We all play a part in making the digital world safer. Whether you're a tech expert or just starting out, stay informed, take those basic precautions. It all makes a difference.
An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right? Thanks for guiding us through all this. It's been a real eye-opener into this crazy world of cybersecurity. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and remember, you don't have to be a tech whiz to be cyber smart.